They said the sea kept its secrets. But what if it didn't want to anymore? The storm was only the beginning. Shoreline Secrets. Chapter 1. Salt on the Wind. The wind bet Jamie first. It carried the cold bite of salt and seaweed, and tugged at his sleeves, as if to pull him closer to the cliffs. He stood beside the car for a moment, staring at the cottage, small, weathered, almost swallowed by the wild grass. It didn't look like the kind of place that kept people safe. It looked like it belonged to the sea. Just for the summer, his mom had said. Somewhere quiet, somewhere you can breathe. Jamie wasn't sure how quiet was meant to help, but here he was. A man stood there, his great uncle, thinner than Jamie remembered, hair silvered, face lined from too many years of wind and sun. His eyes, the kind that have seen storms come and go, softened when he saw Jamie. But he didn't smile. He only nodded, stepped aside, and let Jamie in. Inside the house smelled of old wood, salt, and something faintly like smoke. A coat hung by the door. On the wall above, a single photograph in a cracked frame. A younger version of his uncle, a surfboard under one arm, eyes on the horizon. The man in the photo looked freer, or maybe it was just the way the light had caught his face that day. But his uncle didn't speak of it. He only closed the window against the wind and left Jamie alone with the hush of the house. Dinner had been quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet where every scrape of a fork, every sigh of the wind outside, felt louder than it should. His great-uncle wasn't unkind, just used to the silence. And Jamie, restless in the stillness, felt like a guest in his own skin. He left the house, the air outside cooler, salt sharp. The sky wasn't dark yet, but the day was fading, the last of the light caught in the crest of the waves. He followed the path down. The cliffs rose on either side, the sea breezing steady beyond. And then he saw him, a boy, maybe a little older than Jamie, walking along the shore, barefoot, board under one arm, head bent, as though listening to something only he could hear. The boy wasn't in the water, not now. But the way he moved, it was as if the sea still held him. Jamie stood still, the wind at his back, watching as the boy made his slow way across the sand. The boy didn't look up. He kept walking, board under his arm. The seas pulled still in the way he moved. Jamie stayed there, the wind tugging at his jacket, the salt air sharp in his lungs. He watched until the boy was just a shape against the fading light. Then finally, he turned and made his way home. Inside the cottage, a wall seemed closer. A lamp glowed low in a corner. His uncle sat by it, a cup cradle in his hands. He didn't look up as Jamie entered. Or maybe he did, but only for a second. His eyes returned to the dark beyond the window, as if still listening for the sea. Jamie hesitated and left his uncle with quiet he seems to know so well. The morning came gray and quiet. Light filtered through the thin curtains, pale and cool. Jamie lay still for a moment, listening. The house creaked softly as it settled. The sea's voice always there beneath it, He breathed it in, salt and wood, and something older he couldn't name. Downstairs the cottage was empty. His uncle's boots were gone from beside the door. Out at sea maybe, or walking the cliffs. Jamie didn't know. The kitchen was small, everything worn at the edges. A pot of tea sat cooling on the stove, a mug left out beside it. Jamie poured himself a cup, the taste stronger than he expected. He stepped outside, the breeze cool against his skin. The cliffs rose sharp against the pale sky, the waves below breaking soft against the shore. Jamie stood there, mug in hand, watching the sea. And on the beach, far below, a boy, picking his way across the sand, board under his arm. The same boy. Jamie stayed still, watching until the boy disappeared beyond the cliffs. The silence stretched. The sea kept breathing. Somewhere down there, the boy was gone. Or maybe he'd been a trick of the light. The same way the sea sometimes made rocks into shapes, shadows into stories. Jamie shook his head. No, the boy had been real. He followed the path skirted the edge of the cliffs. The breeze stronger here, salt spray cool on his face. The grass grew wild. The world out here felt bigger and quieter. For a while, he walked, aimless, boots scuffing the stone, hands in his pockets. No plan, no destination. The path narrowed, the cliffs more sheer. Jamie stopped at the bend where the rock jutted out like the prow of a ship. He wondered if his uncle came here, if this was where the photo had been taken, the one with the surfboard, the boy his uncle had been. He wondered what it would feel like belong to the sea, the way the boy on the beach seemed to. His phone vibrated in his pocket, a notification sneaking through. Jamie didn't look at it. He stayed where he was, listening to the waves break on the rocks, steady as a heartbeat. When he finally turned back, the cottage waited, small and square against the sweep of sky. Smoke curled from the chimney now. His uncle was home. Inside, his uncle stood by the stove, pouring tea into 2 mugs. The same stillness in his movements, as if nothing could hurry him now. He didn't speak as he handed Jamie a mug, just met his gaze for a moment, flicker of something behind his eyes, then turned back to the window. The tea was strong, a little bitter. His uncle set his mug down. "Storm coming," he said at last, voice low. Jamie only nodded. He felt it too. Not just in the air, but in the way the house seemed to brace itself. Best to stay off the cliffs for now. Jamie didn't answer, just watched as his uncle's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon, the sea darkening beneath the weight of the sky. The house felt heavier now, the kind of heavy that came before rain, before thunder, before something you couldn't quite name. Upstairs, the rooms were small and spare. A narrow hallway stretched to a door at the far end. Wooden, paint chipped, a rusted latch at the side. The attic maybe. The air felt cooler here, the smell of salt stronger. Jamie hesitated at the door. The latch was unfastened, as if someone had opened it recently. He didn't open it, just stood there, the storm pressing at the walls, the house holding its breath. Jamie turned away, but not before glancing back once more. That night, the storm didn't come all at once. It crept in, soft at first, like a breath beneath the eaves. Jamie lay in the narrow bed, the ceiling sloping low above him. The smell of the sea stronger in the damp. The house shifted around him. Jamie turned on his side, pulling the blanket higher, listening. A sound, so soft he almost thought he imagined it. A floorboard above, the attic. He held his breath, waited. Nothing but the rain. And then, as the wind rose, the attic door, the door at the end of the hall, shifted with a long, slow sigh. Jamie closed his eyes. The house, the sea, the storm, all of them waiting, watching, holding him in the dark. Jamie stayed still beneath the blanket, the weight of it no match for the heaviness in the room. The house settled and shifted around him. Every sound felt louder in the dark. His phone lay face down on the small table. He didn't reach for it. There was nothing there. He turned onto his back, stared at the low ceiling where a shadow danced, with each flicker of lightning beyond the clouds. Jamie thought of the boy on the beach, the way he moved. And for a moment, he envied him. A floorboard above gave a single long creak, the attic door perhaps shifting in its frame. Jamie closed his eyes. The sound came again, soft but certain. A floorboard above, weight shifting in the attic. Jamie rose. The night felt thick with salt and rain, the house holding its breath. At the end of the hall, the attic door stood just ajar. A faint thread of light spilled out, thin and flickering, like the last breath of the moon. Jamie drew closer, heart loud in his ears. Through the gap, he saw him, his uncle's shadow, bent over something long and pale. The hiss of a zipper, slow, deliberate. The canvas fell away, and the surfboard emerged. His uncle stilled, slowly turned, as if he heard something he'd long expected, but hoped never to face. For a heartbeat, they didn't move. Two shadows caught between storm and memory. Then the uncle turned back, hands quick now, drawing the zipper closed with practiced haste. Jamie turned and fled, down the hall, down the stairs, not to his bed, but to the window at the front of the house. Outside, the sea waited, dark, endless, its breast steady beneath the storm. Shoreline Secrets, Chapter 2. Storms don't shout when they leave. They just slip out the back door and leave everything changed. The cottage held its breath as the sky cleared. The cliffs dripped like they'd been weeping. The sea, calmer. The kitchen smelled of salt, smoke, and something warm. Butter hitting the pan. Egg just started to curl at the edges. His uncle stood at the stove, moving slow and deliberate. The kind of breakfast made by habit, not hunger. Jamie sat at the small wooden table. Steam fogged the window behind him. The chair beneath him cracked every time he shifted. He didn't say anything. Not yet. The only sounds were the soft scrape of the spatula, the quiet pop from the toaster, and the sea. Always the sea. His uncle turned, slid one plate across the table. The toast was just shy of burnt, the egg runny at the center. He placed the knife and fork with a kind of reverence, like he didn't want to wake the house. They sat, ate in silence. The tea was strong, still slightly bitter. Jamie watched the yolk split across the toast. And then, as if the silence had stretched too far, why was there a surfboard in the attic? His uncle didn't flinch, didn't even look up, just kept chewing, then reached for his tea, swallowed once, and met Jamie's gaze. You know how to use one? No, Jamie replied. Then it's not safe. He looked away again, back toward the window, the sea beyond it. The silence returned, deeper this time, like the tide pulling back before something else breaks the surface. Jamie picked at the last bit of toast. The question still hung in the room, unanswered, but not dismissed. His uncle drank his tea like nothing else needed to be said. I'm gonna head upstairs for a bit, Jamie said. His uncle just nodded, didn't look away from the window. Jamie stood. He grabbed his phone from the counter and left the room. Jamie climbed slowly, his phone loose in one hand. He didn't go to his room right away. He stopped at the end of the hall, where the attic door stood closed now. Didn't touch it, just stood there, listening. No storm this time. Only the slow breath of the sea through the window glass. Jamie blinked, looked down. On his phone, Rosa was calling. Have you become one with the sheep yet? Rosa asked. Nah, they said I didn't bleat enough. The house creaks like it's got something to say, honestly, Jamie said. Proper horror film energy. Love that for you. But seriously, you were right, Rosa asked. Still breathing, mostly out of boredom, but yeah, Jamie answered. I know you don't want to chat about it yet, but not now, Rosa. All right, just don't go full sea hermit on me, yeah? On his phone, his mom is calling in. Tell her you've taken a vow of silence and seaweed, Rosa laughed. Later, Jamie smirked. And the phone with Rosa ended. Jamie stares at the screen a bit, then swipes to answer. Hi, love. Just checking in. Everything all right? His mom asked. Yeah. Settling in okay? It's quiet. Well, that's kind of the point, isn't it? Bit of peace, bit of space. It's only till the end of summer. We'll get things sorted by then, all right? Doesn't feel like it, Jamie replied, barely audible. His mom soft now. I know, but things are. It's getting better. Just hang in there, okay? Is your uncle treating you all right? Yeah, he doesn't say much, Jamie replied. You two have that in common then, Mom said lightly. And then again, silence. We'll talk soon, promise. Yeah, sure. The phone clicks. Jamie sets it down beside him, exhales. But outside, the light was changing. Cleaner, brighter, the kind of calm that comes after something leaves, and before something else begins. Later, Jamie followed his uncle into town. A drive through narrow lanes, salt still dried on the window. Silence riding between them, like a third passenger. Cornwall held its stories in the clips. Not the loud kind, not the ones you'd told, but the ones that waited, that watched. In the curve of a stone wall, in the rust on a gate, in the way every road seemed to lean toward the sea. Old houses lined the main street, narrow, sloping, and around it all, the sea never far. Like a whisper you could almost hear, even when it wasn't speaking. The town was small. One road curling like driftwood through rows of old stone buildings. Paint faded, signs rusted at the corners. A post office, a bakery, a single corner shop. Jamie followed his uncle through the narrow aisles. The men didn't speak much. Just pick up bread, milk, eggs, the same way you pick up habits. At the back, someone called out, "Well, I'll be. You're still upright then, old man." Jamie's uncle turned, the corner of his mouth twitching, not quite a smile, but something close. The man walked over. "Didn't know you had company." Glances at Jamie. "Your nephew, yeah?" Jamie nodded, unsure if he was meant to say anything. "You getting him out on the board yet?" Friend asked. "He doesn't know how." "What, never surfed?" Jamie shook his head. "Well, we can't let that stand, can we? Got a few of the lads down near Gull's Point this week. You should come by. I'll tell Sam to look out for you," he said playfully. Jamie didn't say anything, but the name lingered, like sea salt on the back of his throat. Across the road, tucked between a cafe, he saw it. A record shop, faded sign, window display of worn sleeves and handwritten price tags. "Can I check that place out real quick?" His uncle glanced over, nodded once. The friend gave a wave. The shop smelled like old wood and cardboard sleeps. Posters for shows long past curled at the corners. Jamie moved down the aisle. 13 Senses, Rosie and the Gold Bug. Someone signed LPs with names he didn't know. Then he saw it. A white sleeve, no title on the spine, just a name, faintly penciled across the front. SNWB. The Echo Between Worlds. Demo. Sticker on the corner read, "A string playlist for what still hurts." It looked like it had been pressed just once, maybe twice. The kind of thing someone made for friends, or for someone who never came back. He picked it up, held it, then put it back. By the time he reached the cottage, the sky had cooled to gray. Grass brushed his sneakers. Inside, the quiet returned, familiar now. Almost welcome, but not quite. Jamie should have bought something, even just to break the silence. Then came the knock. Jamie looked up from the coat hook. His uncle had already crossed to the door. Framed in the light, a boy. No words at first, just the sound of the wind curling between them. Jamie stepped closer, but didn't speak. Didn't have to. Because the boy on the porch was the same one he'd seen. Jamie blinked once. "Hey," Sam said. Jamie watched him, not openly, just in glances. Up close, Sam looked different than he had on the shore. There was a kind of ease to him. Jamie had imagined him freer, maybe even wilder. But up close, it wasn't wildness. It was stillness, like he belonged to something Jamie hadn't learned how to stand in yet. a silent stretch between them. "You look bored stiff. Want to get out of this cave for a bit?" Sam said. Jamie didn't answer right away. He hadn't expected Sam to speak or to offer. But the house behind him was too quiet, and the air outside felt clearer than his thoughts. He nodded and followed. The path curved down, skirting the cliff's edge, sharp drops on one side, tangled grass on the other. Sam didn't say much. He just walked ahead, surfboard tucked under one arm like it weighed nothing. Jamie followed. At the bottom of the path, the sand opened wide, empty, except for the low tide curling in soft crescents along the shore. Sam dropped the board with a thud and kicked off his shoes. Then, without a word, he peeled off his shirt, slow, careless, and tossed it aside. Jamie didn't mean to stare, but he did. Lean, brown from sun, the kind of body that came from use. Muscles that didn't try to be muscle, just was. His thin chain caught the light at his neck. Sam crouched to adjust the fin on the board. Jamie had seen plenty of bare chests, in school, online, even in changing rooms. But this was different. This was real, and right in front of him. Sam Glenn stopped, squinting. "You coming? Or you just gonna melt on the spot?" Jamie looked away fast, too fast, then stepped forward, unsure where to look, unsure of how not to. Sam didn't talk much, didn't explain like a teacher, more like someone used to being watched. He pointed once, at the board, at the water, then dropped low to show how to paddle. Jamie crouched beside him, nodding like he understood. But it wasn't the lesson that stuck. It was the way Sam moved, like the sea didn't just welcome him, it recognized him. Sam stood again, shook the sand from his legs. "Just watch me for now," Sam said. He paddled out fast, quick strokes cutting clean. Waited. The wave came, not too high, not loud, just enough to carry him. And then he rose, not just standing, lifting into something Jamie hadn't known a body could do. Like flight, but grounded, like freedom. It lasted only seconds, but Jamie felt it. Something shift, something spark. A quiet thrill under his ribs. Not fear, not yet. Sam came out of the water and shouted, "Hey, got a spare board at mine, I'll bring it by. We'll go out tomorrow. Early's best. The sea's less crowded, calmer, easier to listen." The sun was lower now, the tide pulling back like it had seen too much. He looked at Sam. Sea strict, sun warned, something wild still clinging to his skin. And said nothing, because he couldn't yet. They walked the cliff past back, not saying much. The breeze had calmed, the light turned golden, the kind that made everything feel like memory before it was even over. Near the gate, Sam paused. Look over at Jamie, who was still clutching the towel like it might steady him. "You've got a lot to learn." And then, just like that, he reached over, slung his arm across Jamie's shoulders. Not heavy, not playful, just there. It was just a moment, but Jamie felt it all the same. The shape of Sam's arm, the weight of him, warm, solid. The kind of closeness he hadn't realized he missed. They reached the porch. Sam stepped back, gave him a quick nod, and turned. Early tomorrow. Don't sleep in. That night, the house stayed still. No storm, no whispers from the attic. Only the memory of sea and skin, and the touch that hadn't left him. Not every tide brings back what it takes, but some mornings feel like forgiveness. There was no thunder, no wind pushing at the walls, just the hush of the sea, and the space between questions that hadn't been asked yet. Some stories don't shout. They slip in quietly, told in second chances, in saltstone glances, in footsteps that pause, just long enough to be noticed. This is Shoreline Secrets, Chapter 3. The Things the Tide Gave Back. This was the kind of morning that didn't explain itself. But if you listened, really listened, you might hear the moment before something begins. In this chapter, Jamie waited, not for a storm this time, but for something smaller, maybe softer, maybe just a boy with a surfboard. Morning came slow, not heavy like storms, just quiet, pale, like the day hadn't decided yet what it wanted to be. The house was still. No creak from the attic. No sound from his uncle downstairs. Only the sea. Jamie sat at the edge of the bed, one sock on, one in his hand, not really getting dressed. The kitchen smelled faintly of tea leaves. The air still held salt from the night before. He stepped outside. Sam had said early, but early could mean a lot of things to someone who moved with the tide. So Jamie waited. Not at the cliff, not at the shore, just by the gate. He just stood. And then Sam appeared, holding two surfboards awkwardly over his head, arms stretched wide like some kind of sleepy-armed scarecrow. His hair was still damp from the morning rinse. One flip-flop was half on, the other missing. And the look on his face, the kind of look that said, "I regretted this the second I left the house." Sam shouted, "You ready?" Jamie nodded, the edges of his lips curling upward, not in amusement, but in something quieter. Sam stepped forward with a huff and exhaled as he passed one board to him, the weight clearly catching up. Jamie caught it, adjusting his grip, easing into the moment. "Thanks," he said. And the two of them turned toward the sea. The beach was empty, low tide curling in white crescents, like the sea was trying not to wake anyone. They didn't head straight into the water. Sam dropped his board onto the sand, like he'd done it 1,000 times. Just crouched beside the board, flattening a space with his hand, motioning Jamie down beside him. "Before you ride away," Sam said, brushing sand flat with the side of his hand, "you gotta know how to fall." He looked up at Jamie with a crooked half-smile, the kind that hinted this wasn't just about surfing. "Falling's not a failure," he added. "It's how you figure out where to stand." Jamie raised an eyebrow. "I thought surfing happened in water." Sam glanced over. "Tell that to the bruises on my ribs. Now lie down, stomach flat, hands here." The lesson started simple: paddle posture, hand placement, balance. Sam moved easily around him, adjusting his elbow with a quick tap, nudging his foot slightly without asking. You'll fall forward first. Everyone does. If you fall backward, you're overthinking it. Jamie didn't respond. He just nodded, jaw a little tighter than before. After 30 minutes, Sam stood and stretched. All right, let's see you forget all of that in real time. They waited out. Jamie paddled hard, unsure if he was doing any of it right. Probably wasn't. He tried catching the first wave. Too early. The second, too late. The third, it caught him and spun him. A full tumble, board flying out from under him. He stood up in waist-deep water, dripping, breathless, blinking the sting of salt out of his eyes. Sam, still floating on his board, watched with what might have been pity or amusement. See you back on the sand. So much for natural talent. But for some reason, the failure didn't feel like the end of something. Just a start of being seen. Wrong-footed, off balance, but seen. They sat a little longer, until the salt dried on their skin, and the silence felt full but not heavy. Then Sam stood. I know a better place to rest. Jamie looked up. Come on, Sam said, tilting his head toward the path. It's cooler there. And 0 witnesses if you decide to fall asleep drooling. He started walking, not waiting for an answer. His board bounced lightly against his hip. It wasn't a command, but it also wasn't a request. It felt like an invitation. Jamie followed, not struggling exactly, just heavier. Not from the water, not even from the fall, but from something older. The kind of weight that doesn't bruise the skin, but stays anyway. Waiting from silence to notice it. Something that had followed him, all the ways from school hallways to the edge of this coast. Sam didn't seem to carry anything like that. He moved like someone who belonged here, to the path, to the air, to himself. Jamie watched him from behind, quietly wondering what it would feel like to walk like that. You come out here a lot? Jamie asked. Sometimes. Mostly when the weather's in a good mood, Sam replied. He dropped his board beside a weathered rice and lay back in the grass, arms folded behind his head, eyes on the sky like it had nothing to demand from him. He didn't say this is the spot, but it was. Jamie hesitated, then followed, slower, folding himself down onto the ground beside him. Not close enough to touch, just near enough to share the view. The sky above stretched pale and endless, the kind of blue that didn't feel warm yet. Beside him, Sam exhaled slowly, like someone who knew how to rest in his body. For a while, they just lay there, the sound of their breathing falling into a rhythm of the wind. Not synchronized, but not out of step either. Jamie turned his head slightly, gaze drifting to Sam. His face relaxed. You really love it, don't you? The sea. Sam didn't move. It's the only thing that doesn't ask for anything back. Jamie didn't know if that was sad or enviable. Maybe both. He hesitated, then spoke again. You ever shared it with someone? Sam's eyes flicked toward him. He didn't smile this time, just looked, held Jamie's gaze longer than usual. A pause. Then Sam turned back to the sky. The quiet stretched, not empty, just undecided. He let the next question rise like a wave. Not loud, not forced, just there. Can I tell you something? Jamie hadn't meant to say it, not today. But something about the stillness made it harder to keep carrying. Sam didn't speak, didn't push, just lay beside him, listening. Jamie opened up, not all at once, not with drama, just enough for the truth to begin. He told Sam why he was here. There was a boy back at school. Jamie started. He didn't say the boy's name, didn't need to. He talked about the way they used to walk home in the same direction. The long glances, the silence between them. How he thought maybe it meant something. Until one of his friends said something. A joke in the schoolyard. A laugh that landed too close to truth. Jamie had panicked. So I said he was the one. He was the one always looking at me. The boy didn't speak to him after that. Didn't look at him. The next week they fought. Not loudly. Just enough for teachers to pull them apart. Enough for Jamie to be sent home. My mom said maybe I needed a break. Somewhere quiet. Since it's my last year. Sam didn't respond right away. He sat up slowly, arms resting on his knees, and looked at Jamie. Not with judgment, not even surprise, just something close to ache. Then quietly, you're not the only one who's done something afraid. And you're not the only one still carrying it. They lay there for a while, just letting the hush do what words sometimes can't. Time passed like tide, slow and certain. Then Sam spoke. My great-grandfather used to surf this coastline. Jamie turned his head, but didn't interrupt. Sam continued. He talked about finding an old letter once. Folded, yellowed, left inside a book no one had opened in years. Not a diary. Just a single letter, never sent. A love letter, unfinished. He wrote it to someone he couldn't be with. Said he lost everything for loving. Jamie didn't ask how old the letter was. Didn't ask if Sam ever found out who it was meant for. Some silence don't come from not knowing. They come from knowing enough. Sam sat up slowly again, looked out over the edge. Sometimes I wonder if they should still get that letter. He didn't say who or how. But something in the wind picked up right then, like the sea wanted to carry it anyway. A gull called once, then nothing. Jamie sat up too, brushing sand from his palms. Something a little easier in his posture now. Do you want to try to find them? Jamie asked, voice steadier than he expected. Then after a breath, I could help. He didn't say it like a maybe. He said it like someone who knew how much it mattered to be found. Sam turned to him, surprised. Not by the offer, but by the way Jamie said it. Not like a joke, not like a dare, just like someone who meant it. And for the first time since they met, Jamie didn't look like he wanted to disappear. He looked like he might stay. Like maybe this summer wasn't about forgetting. Maybe it was about finding something. They started walking back, not in a hurry, not quite ready to let go of the afternoon. The sun stretched lower behind them, painting long shadows across the cliffs. Just before they reached the edge of the path, Sam glanced sideways. "You're not the only person here who's gay." He said it lightly, like a secret that didn't need whispering anymore. Jamie blinked, then smiled. Not a big one. They stood like that for a moment, not needing to say much more. Just the wind brushing the tall grass, the sea whispering below. Then, Jamie said, "Tomorrow morning, same time, right?" This is Shoreline Secrets, a quiet gay love story set on the cliffs of Cornwall. Told in sound, in breath, in what goes unsaid. Jamie was sent to the coast to clear his head, but the sea had other plans. In the last chapter, Jamie learned to fall on the waves, in the silence, and maybe into something beginning. Now something returns from the past. A letter never sent, a mark that might mean something, and a kiss that wasn't supposed to happen, but did. This is Shoreline Secrets, Chapter 4, The Shape Beneath the Water. They surfed again that morning. The sea was calmer. Jamie had fallen twice, once forward, once sideways. But Sam didn't laugh either time. Better than yesterday. But you gotta time it right. Feel the wave. Now Jamie walked the path alone. His arms ached from paddling, but it wasn't a bad ache. It felt earned. The salt clung to his ankles. Sand crept inside the cuff of his jeans, where he hadn't rolled them properly. His towel hung across his shoulders, damp at the edges, brushing the back of his neck. The wind was soft today, more like breath than bite. And the waves, behind him now, whispered instead of roared. The cottage came into view, smoke rising thin from the chimney. No sign of his uncle. Jamie kicked off his shoes by the door, dropped the towel onto the hook, and made his way to the bathroom. The water ran warm, steady. Jamie stepped in without thinking, letting the heat work into his shoulders, rinsing off the salt, the sand, the ache. He stood like that for a while, arms braced against the tile, water gently down his back. Then he turned off the tap, stepped out slowly, towel across his shoulders again, but this time dry, softer. The salt was gone, washed from his skin. But something stayed, something you couldn't scrub off. He dressed slowly, the same old hoodie from the day he arrived. The sleeves were slightly stretched now. Then he sat at the edge of the bed, not ready to lie down, not ready to do anything else either. His phone lay nearby, face down on the table. He reached for it, tapped the screen. 11:14. Sam had said noon. Jamie set the phone down again. Screen up this time. The minutes would have moved any faster, but he kept glancing at them anyway. Jamie arrived at Sam's just before noon. He raised his hand to knock, but the door opened first. Sam stood there, barefoot, his hair still damp from a quick rinse, eyes catching light like they always seemed to. "Right on time," he said, like it wasn't surprising. Jamie gave a small nod and stepped in. The inside of the house smelled faintly of toast and something like lemon polish. From deeper in the house, a woman's voice called out, "Sandwiches are on the counter. You boys eat something before you run off again." Jamie glanced toward the voice. "Thank you," he called gently, polite but genuine. Sam's room was smaller, low ceiling, slanted roof, and a small bed messed up. There was a stack of books on the desk, and a cracked mug with pens inside. The kind of space that looked like it belonged to someone who didn't mind being alone. They ate in mostly silence. Jamie chewed slowly, watching the way dust floated through the air. He didn't know what to say, so he didn't force anything. Halfway through his sandwich, Sam leaned back on one arm and looked at him amused. "You've got sauce on your lip?" Jamie blinked, wiped the left side of his mouth with the back of his hand. Sam raised an eyebrow. "Other side." Jamie stilled, awkward. Sam leaned forward slowly. No teasing now. With the pad of his thumb, he gently brushed the right side of Jamie's mouth. His hand lingered for half a second. Their faces were close now. Jamie didn't breathe for a beat. Sam leaned back a little, holding up his hand. "Come on. I've got nowhere to wipe it." Jamie blinked. Sam held his fingers a little closer. "Lick it." Jamie laughed, caught off guard. He hesitated, then leaned forward, tongue barely brushing the side of Sam's finger. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make Sam freeze, just for a second. "Thanks," Sam said. Then he pulled back, looked down at his plate, said nothing more. Jamie reached for his glass of water and drank too quickly. After they cleared the plates, Sam moved toward his desk and pulled something from the thin manila folder. "This," he said, handing it over, "was inside one of my great-grandpa's books. My mom found it ages ago. Thought it was just some poem, but I kept it." Jamie took it carefully. No greeting, no sign-off, just a single page of words. "My dearest, I have tried, more than once, to leave these words unwritten. But they return, like the tide. I loved you in the mornings, when you would drop your board in the sand. I loved you in the silence too, when we sat side by side, knees barely touching. You made the shore feel like something I could belong to. You made me feel known, without ever asking for it. I should have told you then, but the word was not kind to men like us. I was afraid, not of what I felt, but of what it might cost you to feel it too. Still, I carry those days like a warmth under my ribs. If you ever find yourself by the sea again, know that I loved you, without shame. It was all that I had to give. Yours always." Jamie read the whole thing twice before he spoke. He never signed it? Nope, Sam said, quietly. No name. Just that. Jamie flipped the page slowly. On the back, near the lower right corner, something caught the light. 2 small wave-like lines, drawn by hand, not decorative, not part of the paper's design. Just 2 little curves, side by side, one overlapping slightly. He tilted the page toward Sam. Was this already here? Sam leaned in, then blinked. Don't think I ever noticed that. They both stared at it for a moment. Something about it felt quiet and deliberate, like it wasn't meant for someone specific. Jamie smoothed the paper gently with his fingers, then asked, not teasing, "Have you ever written a letter? Like a real one?" Sam gave a small laugh. Not unless birthday card counts. Jamie smiled too, barely. Then after a pause, I wonder what it was like back then. Sam didn't answer, not right away. He just looked at the wave mark, traced it once with his finger. Maybe that's why he wrote it down, he said softly. So at least one part of it could exist. Jamie nodded. They didn't say anything else after that, but the silence between them had shifted. Not full of questions, not full of answers. Just enough space to feel something unspoken settling in. The letter lay open between them. Jamie's hand rested on the edge of the paper, fingers curling slightly around a corner. He looked at Sam, who was still sitting with his back against the wall. What would you write? He asked, voice quiet. Sam looked over, brow raised. Right what? Jamie gave a half shrug. I don't know. A letter, maybe? A letter to who? Jamie hesitated, then said, someone you liked, or had a crush on. Sam pauses for a second, and starts. All right, letter time. He cleared his throat, like he was about to mock perform something theatrical. But when he spoke, his voice came quieter than before. Dear Jamie, I loved you. I knew it because you ate the crust, even when they were burnt. Because you didn't talk much, but always sat close. Because you never looked at the ocean like it was big, just like it was honest. I loved you because something about you made everything quieter. And it felt okay to stop running, just for a second. Yours truly, love, Sam. Sam reached forward, slowly, not dramatic, just sure. But when Jamie leaned in, Sam met him halfway. Their lips touched, softly once, then again. Slower this time, deeper. Jamie's hand came up, hesitated, then gently touched Sam's jaw, thumb resting just below his ear. Sam leaned in, his hand brushing Jamie's thigh, fingers curling into the fabric of his jeans. They pulled back only slightly, foreheads near, noses brushing, eyes half-lidded but open. Jamie exhaled. Me neither, Sam said, before Jamie could finish. They didn't laugh. They just stayed there, breathing together like it meant something. Like it always had. And then Jamie leaned in again. Sam met him fully, lips parting just enough. A kiss that held longer, deeper, like they both finally understood what it was. No one rushed. There was no noise in the room except a faint brush of breath and the creak of the floor under them. When they finally broke apart, it wasn't with a start. It was with stillness, a closeness that stayed. The letter still sat open on the floor. The light through the window had turned gold. And for the first time in a long time, Jamie didn't feel like he was visiting someone else's life. He felt like he was in his own. The past home was the same, but something in Jamie had shifted. He could still feel it, the kiss. Not on his lips, but in his chest. He didn't try to name it, just walked, slow and steady, letting the day fold in around him. The air was cooling as he reached the house. His fingers brushed the edge of the doorframe on the way in. But the quiet felt different now. Not empty, just waiting. In the kitchen, his great-uncle was standing by the stove, pouring hot water into a chipped mug. The kettle let out a faint hiss as it settled. Jamie stepped inside. Neither of them said much at first. "Did you ever know someone named Arthur?" he asked quietly. His uncle didn't respond right away. The spoon slowed in the mug, then stopped. He set it down carefully on the saucer. The sound felt louder than it should have. "We used to surf together," he said. Jamie hesitated. "Was he your friend?" The old man didn't look at him, just stood there for a moment, hands braced against the counter. "Don't remember much," he said. Another pause. Something unspoken sat between them. Then he picked up his tea and left the room. Jamie stayed where he was for a moment after his uncle left. He looked at the untouched second mug on the counter, the faint ring of tea on the saucer. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and leaned against the table. The screen lit his face as he opened his message. He hesitated, then typed, "Guess what happened today?" A few seconds later, 3 dots appeared. Rosa replied, "What?" Jamie smiled and typed, "A kiss." The dots reappeared. Then another message popped up. "I'm calling you." A second later his phone buzzed. He swiped to answer. "Took you long enough," Rosa said. "Tell me everything." Jamie laughed, the kind that came from somewhere deeper than just amusement. "I will, I promise." He stepped out of the kitchen and headed toward his room. Was it awkward? Or like movie-worthy? Jamie was about to answer when something caught his eye. The attic door. It was slightly open, just enough to see the faint slant of light inside, and a shadow, movement. His great-uncle was up there again. Jamie stopped walking. "Rosa," he said quietly, "I'll call you back." "Wait, what?" "Just, I'll call you back." He hung up before she could ask anything else. The hallway was silent again. Jamie moved toward the attic door, slow, careful. He reached the top and stood just outside, not entering, just watching. The attic was warmer than he expected. Jamie stepped in slowly, the wood groaning beneath each step. His great-uncle didn't acknowledge him, just knelt in the corner, unzipping a long canvas bag laid across the faded blanket. It was a surfboard. Long, weathered, sun-bleached in places. The zipper gave way with a dry rasp. Jamie stopped a few feet away. "Can I see it?" The older man didn't speak, only shifted slightly to the side, allowing him closer. Jamie crouched. The board was beautiful in its age, scratched and softened by time, but lovingly preserved. Jamie looked down at the board, then back at the man beside him. "Were you good at it?" he asked softly. No answer, but a smile flickered across his uncle's face. Just for a second. It told him everything. "Can I use this?" The smile faded, but not in a sad way. His uncle gave a slow nod. Nothing more, just enough. Jamie ran his hand over the board, tracing the outline near the base. Then he saw it. 2 wave marks, intertwined. Not decorative, not accidental. Exactly the same as the one in the letter. Jamie stared. His throat felt suddenly dry. He looked up. The attic light caught the edge of his uncle's face. Unreadable. "You two were more than friends," Jamie said. Not a question. A silence followed. Long, heavy. Now the great uncle turned away, not in shame, but like someone who'd opened a door that should have stayed closed. The attic felt quiet again, but something lingered in the air, like dust disturbed by truth, like the past exhaling. It was a boy with sun in his hair, wind-burned cheeks, and salt water on his skin. Barefoot, board in hand. Another boy waited for him at the edge of the rocks. A double wave mark scrolled between them in the sand, already half washed away. The memory didn't stay long, just a flicker. A love that was never named, but never really gone. Jamie didn't choose the coast. His mom sent him here. Somewhere quiet, somewhere you can breathe. But the sea had other plans. He met Sam, a boy who moves with the tide, with salt in his hair and something unspoken in his eyes. Then came the letter, a page that had waited decades to be found, signed only with a mark, 2 waves, side by side, a promise from someone long gone. In their search for answers, Jamie and Sam found more than they expected. A kiss neither planned, and the first crack in the silence around Jamie's great uncle. That mark is about to take them further than they ever gone. Back to a different Cornwall, the summer of 1960. 2 boys. One love story no one dared speak of, until now. This is Shoreline Secrets, Chapter 5. 2 waves, 1 tide. The morning was pale, cold enough to keep their hands deep in their sleeves. Jamie's board was heavier than Sam's. Wood instead of foam, salt still clinging in the grain. He shifted it under his arm. Fingers tapped the nose. 2 waves, side by side. Sam saw it before Jamie spoke. Stopped walking. "It's the same," he said. Jamie's eyes stayed on the mark. "It is." A gull crossed the sky. The sound fell further than it was. They were supposed to be in the water, lesson starting soon. But the pull was here. "Surf can wait," Sam said. Jamie nodded once. Jamie turned his head toward the cliff. Sam followed. The cottage stood above the waterline, white walls catching the pale light. roof dark from last night's rain. On the porch, a man stood, still watching. Jamie's fingers tightened on the board, the mark under his hand. From high on the porch, Jamie's great-uncle watched the shoreline. The boys were shapes against the pale sand. Jamie's board was different, older, wood-worn smooth, edges softened by years. Even from here, he knew where the mark was. 2 waves, side by side. His breast caught. He had run his fingers over that same mark before, long before. The wind shifted. Salt carried up the cliff. Jamie's voice, caught in the air, folded into another, a laugh he hadn't heard in years. The beach below blurred. Sam's outline, Jamie's stance, fading into shape he remembered. Edward, Arthur's voice carried over the tide, full of salt and sun. Edward turned, just in time for Arthur to close the space between them. A big hug, arms tight, words knocking lightly together. Arthur laughed into his shoulder, breast warm against his ear. They pulled back just enough to see each other, both smiling. Arthur set his board down first. Edward followed, laying the nose just above the tide's reach. Arthur's fingers found the mark, traced the twin lines cut into the wood. 2 waves, side by side. Arthur tilted his head toward the sea. Waves are small today. Perfect for you to finally beat me. Edward smirked. Perfect for you to stop pretending you're better. Arthur laughed, deep and easy. Come on then. They waded in, water curling cold around their ankles. The boards rolled low in the shallows. Paint faded in places, edges dulled by years of salt. Arthur pedaled first, Edward following just behind. A small set rolled in. Arthur glanced back, grinning. This one's ours. They caught it together. The wave carried them in side by side, close enough for their shoulders to brush. They let the board slide up the wet sand, collapse beside them, breathing hard. Arthur's hand stayed on Edward's arm longer than needed. The only sound was the tide breathing in and out. Edward turned his head, looked at him. Wreathy looked. Salt on his lashes, sun on his cheek, breath still fast from the wave. Arthur met his eyes, didn't look away. Edward's chest rose, Arthur's fell, then the other way round. A rhythm that felt like it could go on forever. Arthur picked up his board. Edward did the same. They walked back along the sand, boards on their arms. Arthur said something, low just for him. Edward's mouth lifted in a half-smile. From the porch above, an older Edward stood still, watching the boys in his memory. The shapes overlapped. Arthur's laugh and Sam's smile. His own younger stance and Jamie's. 2 pairs, 2 summers. The wind pulled at the grass. The sea moved the same, as it always had. Jamie and Sam moved along the same stretch, boards on their arms. The older board's nose resting in Jamie's palm, right where the mark was carved. The sand here was firm, holding each step in shallow prints. Sam glanced at Jamie's hand, then at his face. "We'll go to mine first," he said. "Pick up the letter." Jamie nodded. They didn't hurry. The boards were heavy. The path to the road was longer than it looked. Sam's house sat low against the road, the kind of place that seemed to grow out of the ground. They left the boards leaning by the side wall. Inside the air was warmer. Finding the letter was easy. It was right where they left it. Sam set it on the table. Edges yellowed, folds sharp as a held breath. Jamie carried the page to the doorway, held it where the light was clean. Outside the board waited, nose catching a thin line of sun. He lifted the paper to the carve. Not touching, just close. Left curve higher, right curve tighter. A small notch where the lines met. The same, not just a shape. And now we know, he said. Jamie nodded. Sam's voice was quiet. They were more than friends. Jamie looked up. The space between them felt smaller. Jamie lifted the old wooden board, held it under his arm, the mark brushing against his side. The road back to Jamie's was quiet, lined with grass bending in the wind. Jamie's great-uncle was still on the porch when they came through the gate. His eyes were far away, out underwater. Jamie leaned the board against the wall. Sam caught Jamie's eyes, a silent nod. Their fingers laced, not hidden, not hurried. Jamie's great-uncle's gaze shifted from the sea to the boys, to their joined hands. The kitchen smelled faintly of tea in the sea. Jamie's great-uncle moved slowly, measuring leaves into the pot. Jamie sat across from the window, Sam beside him. Steam began to rise from the kettle. Jamie's great-uncle glanced over his shoulder. "I see you two getting along," he said, the hint of a smile in his voice. "That's good to see, Jamie. Feels like it suits you here." Jamie felt heat in his face. "Maybe," he said softly. And Jamie's great-uncle sat down opposite them. Sam reached into his pocket. He set a folded paper on the table. Jamie's great-uncle's eyes dropped to it. The steam from the tea curled upwards, curling through the space between them. He didn't reach for it right away, just looked, breast pulled in. "What is this?" "In my great-granddad's things," Sam said. Jamie's great-uncle's thumb brushed the mark. Then he unfolded the paper, read in silence. The room seemed to shrink. Only the cattle tickling filled the air. Jamie leaned forward, voice low. "I don't think he ever gave it to you." He stood, letter in hand, and walked into the living room. Jamie caught Sam's eyes, a small tilt of head. "Let's go." They rose from the table. As they stepped into the hall, Sam glanced back. Great-uncle sat in the armchair, letter open on his knees, his gaze fixed on the page. Sam's eyes lingered, and the sound of the present began to thin. Jamie's great-uncle heard the boys climbing the stairs. "Come on, Arthur." Laughter followed the words. Jamie and Sam blurred at the edges. The boards beneath their feet became a different summer. Now it was Arthur, and a much younger Edward, walking up those same stairs. They were still damp from the surf. Salt clung to their skin, hair darkened by seawater. Arthur grinned over his shoulder. Edward caught up and pressed a finger to his lips. They slowed only a little, feet soft on the steps, the air between them already charged with what they meant to do once the door closed upstairs. They slipped into Edward's room. Closing the door was the quietest click they could manage. Arthur's back hit the edge of the bed. Edward was already pulling at his shirt, laughing under his breath. In seconds, their tops were on the floor, bare skin warm from the climb upstairs, still carrying the salt from the sea. Arthur's hand rested at Edward's waist. His grin softened. "You know what we should do?" Low enough for only Edward to hear. Get a tattoo. Right here. On our waist? Arthur nodded. I love you. Edward's breast caught, half from the touch, half from the way Arthur was looking at him. They kissed again, harder this time. The kind of kiss that left no room for air, and no thoughts of stopping. Edward's hand slid down, finding Arthur's belt. Metal shifted, close loosening. The boards underfoot creaked softly as they moved toward the bed, pulling at each other's clothes. Mad was the one that had been building since the first wave that morning. Arthur's jeans were halfway down. Edward's hands on his hips, skin to skin now. Arthur's mouse found Edward's again. And that's when the door opened. I made sandwich. Edward's mother stood frozen, eyes wide, hands empty. The smell of bread and cheese spilled into the room was her shock. Arthur stepped back so fast he hit the bed frame. Edward reached for his shirt, yanking it up, the fabric twisting in his hands. Arthur grabbed for his trousers, clutching them to his waist. No one spoke. Only the sound of the last plate spinning to a stop on the wooden floor. The boards creaked overhead. Another creak, and then a laugh. Only the laughter weren't Arthur's anymore. Jamie's great-uncle blinked. The ceiling above him was the same. The sound was the same. But now it was Jamie and Sam, their feet moving across the boards, their voice muffled through the floor. His hand came up, covering his face. The first sob stayed in his chest. The second slipped out. Jamie closed the door behind them. The latch caught with a soft click. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room felt smaller than it had that morning. Sam sat on the edge of the bed, turned the letter in his hands. Jamie stayed standing, watching the paper shift between his friend's finger. "You okay?" Jamie asked. Sam nodded once. Jamie moved closer. The bed dipped under their weight. The wind moved faintly through the window. Sam turned his head just enough to meet Jamie's eyes. Jamie glanced at the letter, then back to Sam. "You really think it was meant for him?" he asked. Sam nodded. "I do." Jamie's hand moved without him thinking, resting lightly over Sam's. Sam didn't pull away. His fingers turned to catch Jamie's. Then Sam's gaze dropped to Jamie's mouth. Just for a second. Jamie leaned in, the space between them, close with the softest brush of lips. Sam's breath caught. Jamie felt it, and kissed him again. The floorboard under the bed creaked softly as they shifted. In another time, in the same house, love like this had been a dangerous secret. Here and now, it was as simple as leaning in. That night, the house was quiet. Jamie lay in bed, half dreaming, when he heard it again. The faint groan of the attic floorboards. He pushed the blanket back, sat up, feet on the cold boards. Another step above him, and now not there. And another, and another. Jamie rose, took 2 paces toward the door, and stumped. For tonight, he let his great-uncle have his memory. Jamie's great-uncle's shadow moved across the attic beams. The air up here was cooler. He knelt by an old trunk, lifting the lid. Inside, a scattering of books, a scarf, a folded jumper. Beneath them, an envelope. Cream paper, edges yellowed. Mr. Edward Hargreaves and Miss Catherine Moore, Request the honor of your presence. Edward's thumb pressed against the embossed date. His jaw tightened. He set it aside. Next, a photograph. Two boys in rolled-up trousers, shirts damp from the sea. A slip of black-edged paper lay beneath it. Arthur Bennett, funeral service. 12 September, 1965. And then a letter. Inside, a signature he had not seen in decades. Arthur. Jamie's great-uncle sat back on his heels. The first letter, the one Sam had brought, still in his pocket. He took it out, laid it on the attic floor. Beside it, he placed a 1 in the box. Same fold, same wave mark in the corner. But the rest, not the same. Different handwriting. His eyes went to the corner of the page, the signature, Arthur. Then he picked up the letter Sam had brought. Didn't know you kept mine, he murmured. Funny, it's found its way back to me. Then his thumb brushed the name of the letter lying on the floor. Arthur. I love you. In the quiet of the attic, 2 letters lay between past and present. One he had written, one he had received. The ears between them were filled with everything he could never say. Below, the sea moved as it always had. Above, the night held the house still. And in the space between, Edward kept Arthur close. By late July, the coast had already given him more than he expected. A kiss he hadn't dared imagine. A friend who listened when he told the truth. An uncle who finally let silence crack into memory. But the sea never stopped at what it gave. It carried the past back with it, and left him facing what he tried to bury. This summer was not forever. It was only the stretch between what had broken and what had waited beyond the horizon. And before the tide could turn, there were still things he had to face. The anger of a friend, the weight of a mistake, and the truth of what it meant to stay when the world is already calling you back. This is Shoreline Secrets, Chapter 6, The Sea That Remembers. The phone buzzed against the table. Once, twice, a third time, before he gave in and picked it up. The voice on the other end came sharp, angry that he hadn't called back. It was Rosa, always Rosa. She didn't wait for him to explain. She filled the air herself. She said his name, Ben. And with it, the room shifted. The last day of school all over again. The moment he wanted to forget and couldn't. Rosa's voice over the phone. I spoke to him. He's fine, Jamie. Better than you think. He doesn't hate you. He's just confused. You don't get to carry it like you broke him. The name landed heavy. Ben. Confused, yes. Hurt, maybe. But not ruined. Not broken the way Jamie had feared. Jamie stayed quiet. He let Rosa's words carry the weight for him. She continued. And don't think I don't know about that kiss. The boy by the sea. What's his name? He said nothing. But Rosa didn't need an answer. She always found what he wasn't saying. Her tone softened after a moment. She reminded him results were still waiting, like a tide that could turn either way. Fingers crossed for Cornwall, Rosa said. The place is you, and you know it. He closed his eyes. The words felt like both a promise and a weight. And Jamie, Rosa continued, don't you dare ghost me again. The line went quiet, and in the hush that followed, he felt the sea pressing faintly through the window, a reminder that even silence was never empty. The day stretched long and bright, the kind of light that left nothing hidden. Jamie and Sam walked the cliffs together, the sea below restless, steady, like it already knew the things Jamie hadn't said. For a while, Sam let the silence carry them. Sam never rushed him. That was the difference. Where Rosa filled the space, Sam made room in it. And somewhere between the steps and the salt air, the memories slipped free. The last day of school, the last exam. Jamie waiting outside the hall, laughing with his friends. Then Ben blurting out a truth Jamie knew never coming. The words replayed now like a salt water in his throat. I like you. Ben's words replayed. The friends had turned sharp, their laughter caught in quick. Ben tried to laugh with them, but the sound broke halfway. Then came the look, the step back, the words that stung more than any fist. Don't touch me, not like that. That was the last word Jamie said to Ben. It was too much. The strike came before he thought, and with it, the silence that followed, louder than the laughter, louder than the bruise blooming on Ben's cheek. Jamie carried it still, like the sea carried its salt, not washed away, not forgiving, just there. And besides Jamie, Sam said nothing, but his silence held steady, like the tide itself. The memory left Jamie raw, like skin rubbed too thin by salt and wind. He let it go into the air between them, and Sam didn't feel the silence, only matched his steps, steady as the tide itself. By the time the pass bent lower, Jamie's breathing had evened out. The cliffs gave way to the beach track, and the shed came into a view. One of Edward's old boards popped against the wall, its paint worn pale, the wood darkened by decades of salt. And the tail, almost hidden in the grain, two waves curled into each other. An old carving, shallow but deliberate. Jamie crouched, tracing the mark with his fingertip. The wood was rough, but the line still held, intertwined. Not one wave, not the other, together, or not at all. Sam knelt beside him, his shadow falling against the board. He didn't reach out, just looked, eyes steady where Jamie's hand lingered. They meant it, Sam said. You don't carve something like that unless you want it remembered. Glad the letter found its place, though. Better there than forgotten, Sam continued. The words pressed into Jamie's chest, heavier than the sea air. The letter held safe in Edward's keeping. The mark left in the open. One meant to be buried, the other carved deep enough to outlast silence. He let his hand fall away from the board, but the shape stayed with him. The curve of two waves bound in the same tide, waiting for someone else to see. From higher on the pass, a voice carried down through the salt air. Boys, tea's ready. Jamie's great-uncle Edward had called. The sound of it broke the hush, gentle but firm, as if Edward knew exactly when to pull them back. Jamie and Sam turned from the shed, the mark still lingering in Jamie's chest, and started off the path toward the house. The kettle hissed as they stepped inside. Edward was already waiting at the table, cup set out, steam rising faint and steady. Beside them, a plate of scones, split and buttered, as if he knew tea alone would not be enough. He didn't ask where they had been. He only poured, pushed the plate toward them, and let the silence settle like something earned. The scrape of knife against porcelain. The soft thought of a cup set down. The kind of sounds that belong to any quiet evening. Yet tonight, they felt heavier. Like a prelude towards waiting too long. For a moment, Jamie thought it would end there. But then Edward cleared his throat, and the sound of it was heavier than the sea. He told them of the summer long ago, when the boards were new, and the mark at the tail still sharp. Arthur was more than a friend, though they never said the word. It was his mother who ended the pretending, opening the door one night, finding them too close. The silence after, sharper than any shout. From then on, everything closed in. Arthur's parents began pressing harder. So did his own mother. Whispers of duty, of family. Talk of marriage came quicker than either boy could breathe. Arthur was the first to bend. His wedding came sudden, a choice that wasn't really his at all. Edward said, it was for the best. It gave them both a way to keep living when the world offered no other. And then came his own wedding. By then, the pressure had its grip. A household already waiting, a child expected. The paths chosen for him long before he took the vows. But months later, Arthur came back, drunk, desperate, standing outside his door in the night. He asked Edward to run away, just the two of them. Edward looked at Arthur's hands. He said he could not. Too many lives had been bound by his by then. Too many eyes watching. Too many rules he already accepted. Arthur left without another word. The cups cooled between them, steam fading. And then Edward spoke again, lower now, as the words resisted leaving. The letter. It wasn't his. It was mine. I gave it to him. And somehow, Arthur must have kept it. All these years, until it found its way back. The words sat heavy between them. Not Arthur's, Edward's. Love written, handed over, and carried back to him long after it was too late. Jamie felt his chest tighten. Sam's gaze stayed on Edward. Steady, searching, as though willing him to say more. And Edward did. His voice shook at first, but then it steadied, like someone who had decided not to hide anymore. It was different then. Harder. The word itself was dangerous. We didn't dare speak it, not even to each other. So we let others choose for us, and they did. Marriage, children, duty, until there was nothing left to call ours. He lifted his eyes then, meeting them both across the table. But you've been given a different time. Don't waste it hiding. Don't bend the way we bent. Cherish what you find, even if it scares you, even if it costs you. Because the cost of silence. Edward's hand brushed the rim of his cup, trembling just slightly. The cost never leaves you. The kitchen held its breath, steam fading to nothing. Jamie's eyes burned, but he kept them low, the weight of the words pressing deeper than shame. Sam was the one who broke the silence, his voice careful, warm. Maybe you'd like to visit him. Together. Edward nodded once, not quick, not ashamed, just steady. The kind of nod that carried a lifetime. The kettle had long gone quiet, but the sound of the sea filled the room instead. When Edward rose, he said nothing more, just gathered the plates with the steady hands of habits. Jamie excused himself soon after, the weight of the evening pressing heavier than the walls could hold. Jamie and Sam climbed the stairs together, Edward's words still heavy between them. The small room was warm with lamplight, the window cracked open just enough to let in the hush of the sea. A book lay face down, a jumper folded over the chair, the kind of traces that turned a borrowed space into something lived in. Jamie sat on the bed. Sam took the chair by the desk, turning it halfway so he faced Jamie. For a while, neither spoke. The silence felt different now, not awkward, but filled with everything Edward had given them. The letter, the mark, love written, but carried too late. It hung between them, unspoken, but too close to ignore. Jamie said, "Do you think it was love back then?" Sam replied, "If it wasn't, why would he still be holding it now?" Jamie swallowed hard. The word itself felt heavier here. Not a joke, not a dare, but something worth keeping. Edward's voice returned in his mind. "Don't waste it hiding. Cherish what you find." Jamie lifted his eyes, breath unsteady. "I applied here. Film school. Results come in August." He twisted the blanket in his hands, forcing the rest out. "If I make it, it means staying. It means maybe we could have more than this summer." Sam leaned closer. His hand rested on Jamie's, steady, patient. It said more than words ever could. But Jamie wasn't done. The words pressed sharp in his chest. "I love you." For a heartbeat, he feared he'd gone too far. But Sam's grip only tightened, his voice low, certain. "I love you too." The words landed like tide against shore, not loud, not sudden, but inevitable. Jamie let out a breath he'd been holding. Sam didn't move away. He leaned in closer, their shoulders pressed, their foreheads brushing in the half-light. The distance between them was a breath, a heartbeat. And then the sound cracked through the hush, jolting them apart just enough. Jamie glanced down. The screen glowed in the dim light. "Mom." For a long moment, he didn't touch it. The sea hummed through the open window, the weight of her name pulling heavier than the tide. Jamie lifted it. Sam lay back on the bed, watching without a word. Jamie crossed to the window, the cool air brushing his face as he raised the phone. "Jamie, finally. I was starting to worry," his mom said. Her voice carried a steadiness he hadn't realized he missed. And yet, even from across the miles, it pressed heavier than he wanted to bear. Mom continued, "School's lifted now. You just need to come back for the final words. After that, it's only waiting on results." The words sank into him like a tide pulling back. The end of one season, the beginning of a waiting. "I spoke to Ben's mom. He's doing better. Don't call him, not yet. Not until you're back with me. We'll sort it out together." Jamie's chest tightened at the name. He glanced back at Sam on the bed, the silence between them holding steady. Jamie replied, "Okay. I'll come next week to bring you home. It's time, love." The line went still. Jamie lowered the phone, the sea pressing in through the open window. From the bed, Sam had heard every word, the speaker louder than he expected. He rose without hesitation, crossed a small space, and wrapped his arms around Jamie from behind. The embrace was firm, steady, holding him against the window's light. No words, just a quiet promise of not letting go. This is Shoreline Secrets, a quiet gay love story set on the cliffs of Cornwall, told in tides, in silence, in all the things we carry, and the ones we finally let go. Over the summer, Jamie came to the coast to get away, but what he found was something older than the cliffs. A boy named Sam, with salt on his skin, a great uncle whose silence held stories, and a house that kept secrets, in the attic, in the waves, in the space between words. Together they uncovered a love that had been written down, a letter that was sent and somehow found its way back, a mark carved into wood, a kiss that wasn't supposed to happen, but did. But summer doesn't stay, the tide always turns, and before Jamie goes, there are still things to face. A grave on the hill, a love that was lost, a breakfast before goodbye, and the letter, left open, unfinished, waiting for the right words. This is Chapter 7, the beginning of something more. The road narrowed the farther they drove. Trees gave ways to fields, then to salt-bleached fences. When they stepped out of the car, the sky stretched wide. Gray but not heavy. Clouds moved without urgency. The kind of sky that knew how to wait. No one spoke at first. The cemetery wasn't marked by a grand gate or a name carved into stone. It was just there. Jamie had never been here before, but somehow it felt familiar, like the air remembered something. They walked in a slow line. Sam was the first to move, leading without thinking. He'd been here before. He knew the steps, the turns. He hesitated once, hand in his pocket, about to gesture forward, about to say this way. But Edward didn't wait. He didn't follow. He turned on his own, quiet and steady, his feet finding the slope without looking. Sam fell back beside Jamie. They exchanged no words, only a glance, and together they let him go ahead. Edward didn't stop. He didn't pause at the rows of names, or trace his fingers over unfamiliar stones. His path curved gently to the right, and the grass parted beneath his steps like the land had always known he'd return. When Edward finally stopped, he stood in front of a small slate marker. No cross, no decoration, just a name, 2 dates, and a quiet weight of time. He didn't kneel, didn't touch the stone. He stood still, as though he already spoken every word in his heart 1,000 times before. And maybe he had. The silence was not uncomfortable. It pressed around them gently, not demanding to be filled, only witnessed. Jamie and Sam stopped a few paces behind. Knowing this moment was not theirs to hold, they lingered at a respectful distance. Edward's voice came only when it was ready. They said it was the water. He didn't sound bitter. Didn't sound angry. Just tired. Just honest. A calm morning. He went out early, like always. Alone. They found his board, but not him. I didn't see him again. The words didn't echo. They simply landed, soft. Jamie looked down, but not away. Sam's hand brushed against his, not to hold, just to say I'm here. We argued, Edward said, about something. I can't even remember what. But I told him to leave, told him to go. I slammed the door. I didn't mean it, but that's the last thing I gave him. His posture didn't change. No longer pulled back by pride, but bowed by memory. He died thinking I didn't want him, Edward said. That's what I carry. Not that he's gone, but that I let him go thinking he wasn't loved. Jamie blinked against a sudden weight behind his eyes. Sam turned slightly toward him, eyes glassy but calm. And still they said nothing. They just stayed. I just hope he forgave me, Edward said softly. The wind paused, or maybe it only felt that way. Then Jamie and Sam stepped back, not retreating, just allowing space. Edward didn't move. He remained there. Alone was the stone. Jamie didn't know. But he was starting to understand what it meant to keep someone's name safe, even after time had tried to wear it down. They stayed until Edward turned back to them, his eyes clearer than before. And the wind, still moving, carried something else now. Not an ending, a release. They hadn't said it was the last, but everything in the air knew it was. Jamie ran his fingers along the edge of his board, gaze skimming the waterline like he was searching for something he couldn't name. Sam nudged his shoulder. You ready? Jamie nodded, and they went. The ocean was cooler than it had been the last few days. Their arms carved familiar passes through the swell, muscles moving from memory. It wasn't about impressing. Not today. Just being here, together. Then came the wave. Not monstrous, but bigger than most. Strong, sure of itself. Jamie saw Sam glance toward him, one brow raised. They both turned, paddled, caught the rise. And for a moment, they were in it, rising. Jamie felt the lift like it had been built just for them. He locked in, crouched low, legs steady. Sam was just ahead. And then he wasn't. A splash, a flail. Jamie didn't falter. He rode it all the way in. He turned, breathless and grinning. I beat you. For the first time I actually beat you. Sam stood waist deep, hair plastered to his face, salt streaking his grin. Only 'cause I let you. Jamie flopped onto the sand, arms spread wide, board beside him. Sam followed up a second later and collapsed next to him, dripping and bright-eyed. They stayed like that, letting the sun do its drying, listening to nothing but breath and the waves. Not bad for a last surf, Jamie murmured. Sam didn't argue. Just nudged. Jamie's arm was his. Jamie closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sunlight bake into his cheeks. His chest still rose and fell from the thrill, but his smile hadn't left. Beside him, Sam huffed dramatically. I think the universe glitched. Jamie cracked one eye open. You riding the wave, me wiping out. Sam lifted a handful of damp sand and let it trickle between his fingers. There's no way that was meant to happen. Jamie turned his head amused. You're really not gonna let me have this, are you? Sam shifted onto one elbow, his grin lopsided. No? The breeze played with Sam's hair, drying it into soft, wild curls. Jamie watched him for a second longer than he meant to, then quickly looked away. Sam flopped onto his back again, sighing. All right, maybe you did earn it. Jamie smirked. Then Sam shouted upright. One more? Jamie blinked. What? One more wave. Redemption arc. He was already standing, brushing sand off his wetsuit. You coming? Jamie laughed, still sprawled on the beach. Nah, I like ending on a win. Sam pointed dramatically, coward, and jogged toward the water. Watch and learn, London boy. Jamie propped himself up on his elbow, watching as Sam dove back into sea. All muscle and motion, and that never backed down fire in him. The sky was open, the water alive, and Jamie sat there thinking, God, I'm going to miss this. They walked barefoot through the dunes, boards tucked under their arm, sea salt drying on their skin, like memories already fading. A low growl broke the silence. Jamie looked over. Was that you? Sam was already laughing. Jamie's stomach answered with a second rumble, louder this time. They laughed together, easy and unfiltered, until the cottage came into view. They pushed open the garden gate, and the door welcomed them with the smell of pancakes. The kitchen was already warm, with the smell of brown butter and maple syrup. A small stack of pancakes set in the center of the table, steam still rising from the top. Next to it, a bowl of sliced fruit. A little too neatly arranged to be accidental. Sam reached for the syrup, pausing as he glanced at the pancakes. Did you make this for me? He asked, smiling at Edward. Edward shrugged, setting down a second cup of tea. Could it been for you? Could been for anyone who was still here this morning. Jamie smirked into his mug. No one seemed in a rush. The car wouldn't come until closer to 10, and the hour still belonged to them. Edward finally leaned back in his chair, watching the two boys over his cup. If you ever find your way back here, he said to Sam, tone easy, I'll tell you more about Arthur. Sam looked up, surprised, not just by the offer, but by the way it was given. Jamie glanced between them, letting the quiet stretch. Then as Edward stood to collect the mugs, Sam glanced at Jamie. It was barely a glance, but it lingered. Jamie caught it, that small crease between Sam's brows, like something unsaid had been sitting there since they stepped through the front door. Jamie pushed his chair back. Come on. Sam stood wordless and followed, the soft thud of their footstep fading as they disappeared down the corridor. Edward didn't stop them. The bedroom door clicked softly behind them. The suitcase stood in the corner. A few folded clothes still waited on the chair. Jamie sat down first. Sam stayed standing. 4 beat. Neither spoke. Then Sam reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, edges slightly worn, like it had been handled more than once. He held it out without a word. Jamie looked at it, then at Sam. What's this? A letter, Sam said, voice low. But don't read it now. Jamie blinked. Why? Sam gave a small breath of laugh. Because if you read it now, I might not get out of here alive. Jamie took it gently, fingers brushing Sam's. He didn't open it. Instead, he set it carefully inside his journal and looked back down. You really wrote me a letter? He asked, half teasing, half stunned. Sam shrugged. I guess I wanted to say something the way Edward did, just in case. Jamie stood, moved closer. They didn't rush. No declarations, no promises. Just a soft tension between two people who didn't need to say everything all at once. Then a kiss. Jamie's hand curled lightly into Sam's shirt. Sam didn't pull away. And somewhere beyond the open window, a car turned into the lane. Sam pulled back first. That's her, isn't it? Jamie nodded, quiet. Yeah. They didn't say anything else, just gathered the morning in their lungs and walked out together. A few days later in London, inside a tucked-away coffee shop, the air smelt of cinnamon and early mornings. Jamie stirred his drink, eyes half-lidded. A yawn escaped before he could stop it. Rosa raised an eyebrow. You okay there, zombie boy? Didn't sleep, Jamie mumbled. Rosa leaned in, elbows on the table. Jet lag from Cornwall? He gave her a look. It's still England. Mental jet lag then, she teased, watching him closely. Been texting the boy, haven't you? Jamie didn't answer, but the curve of his lips betrayed him. Rosa grinned. Thought so. What's his name again? He finally said it out loud. Sam. She sipped her chai. Sam who makes you smile in your sleep. Jamie chuckled. Shut up. Make me, she said, grinning. Then with a teasing look, so when are you going to introduce him to me? Jamie gave a quiet laugh, rubbing at the corner of his eye. He looked like someone running on 2 hours of sleep, and a memory he wasn't ready to let go of. I already miss him, he murmured, then caught himself. That sounded dumb. Rosa waved it off. It sounds honest. Jamie reached into his pocket, not for show, but without thinking. Inside, the edges of a folded letter was already softened from being opened too many times. He didn't hand it over, didn't say much, but Rosa understood anyway. The letter had moved him. That much was clear. And whatever it said, it had been enough to keep him awake until 3 a.m. Staring at the ceiling, reading it again in the dark. You haven't written back yet, have you? Rosa asked gently. Jamie shook his head. Why not? I don't know how to say everything. Rosa leaned back, serious now. Just say something. You won't get another Sam. Jamie lowered his eyes to his coffee cup. For once, he didn't argue. Outside, the city was beginning to wake. Inside, he was already thinking about what to write. Now back in his room, the silence felt thicker. The walls were the same, but he returned different. Everything felt a little out of sync. Somewhere in a drawer, his train ticket was folded next to the letter. The one that had received 3 days ago. The one he read too fast. Too many times. Jamie sat upright with a pen in hand, trying to begin. He crossed out so many beginnings that the paper had creased under the weight of them. None of it felt enough. He paused, chewing lightly on the cap of the pen. When the screen of his phone lit up beside him, a new message. Just a few words, casual, but unmistakably familiar. Sam. Checking in, reaching out. He let the pen fall and picked up the phone. They texted for a while. Nothing heavy. It felt like holding on to something soft and warm, like slipping back into a rhythm. Eventually, Sam's reply slowed. The screen went dark. Jamie placed the phone on his chest and leaned back against the pillows. The room was dim now, just a low glow of the bedside lamp pulling around him. The letter still waited beside him, blank in all the ways that mattered. He meant to pick up the pen again. He meant to try just one more line. But his eyes closed first. And somewhere in the quiet between their last message and morning, he drifted off. The letter still unfinished on the sheets. The morning was already halfway over when Jamie stirred. Light poured through the thin curtains of his London bedroom. A soft knock came, followed by the creak of his door. His mom peeked in. Did you forget what today is? Jamie blinked, the words still foggy in his head. She stepped inside, mug in hand. The results. Shall we check? It took him a second to catch up, to remember the application, the long nights, the essays, the doubt. He reached for his laptop with a sleepy groan and sat up, wiping at his eyes. She stood beside him as the page loaded, a heartbeat. Then, accepted. His mom's hand flew over her mouth with a joyful gasp, and Jamie let out a laugh. Startled, breathless, real. She kissed his forehead, congratulated him in a voice that cracked, and left him alone to take it in. Jamie sank back against the pillows, eyes still on the screen. A slow smile found its way to his face. Not just for the acceptance, but for the way it made things possible again. Beside him, the letter still sat unfinished, its corners curled, its ink smudged. He looked at it for a long moment. Then instead of reaching for the pen, he reached for his phone. His fingers hovered briefly over the screen, then tapped. Calling Sam. It rang once, then again, and then he heard Sam's voice. This was Shoreline Secrets. It wasn't an ending. It was the start of something quietly new. Jamie and Sam's stories didn't close at the shore. It just turned its first page. What began with an attic and an old letter became something more. A promise carried forward, a love returned, a future not yet written, but finally within reach. Thank you for being part of this slow, soft unfolding, for listening through the silences, the waves, the truths that took their time. If this story stayed with you, let us know in the comments. Like, follow, and subscribe to Gay Audiobooks. The full Shoreline Secret is coming soon. Ready for re-listening or gifting to someone who needs a story like this. And there's more on the way. New voices are waiting to be heard. Until then, keep your heart open, keep your words honest, and never underestimate the stories that find you.
First kiss in the face.